part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
And welcome to another Reghi and Roda podcast powered by MGM Northfield Park right here on the Press Play Podcast Network. Shout out to our outstanding producer, Chase Smith, making sure this all gets out to everybody in that podcatosphere. And Michael Reghi, the more things change, the more they stay the same. It's deja vu all over again. I feel like we've started a podcast like this before this year. I think we did, and the result was similar to this. Dolphins 39, Browns 17. Just when you think maybe, after whooping the Bengals' asses a few weeks ago and having a bye to prepare for Tua Tagovailoa and the Dolphins, that the Browns are on the right track, they go and they lay an egg today, wet the bed, crap the pan, whatever you want to say. They just got their butts whooped today in Miami, and I don't know how to figure this team out, to be perfectly honest with you.
Can't figure them out. Last time we got together, we were extremely optimistic, looking at what maybe, even though it was the team they seem to always beat, Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Browns are probably in this offseason, they're going to find a way to schedule Cincinnati double-digit times a year, Kenny, so they maybe can beat somebody. But, yeah, just an atrocity of a performance today, Ken. And not only was the bottom line terrible, especially on the defensive side of the football once again. I mean, just a couple of yards shy of 500 team yards for the Miami Dolphins today.
Yeah.
Andy, I'll ask you. I don't think the effort and the want to was anywhere near what it should have been today. What say you?
Michael, I looked at them, and that opening drive, my hope was rewarded, right? After beating the Bengals, they get the opening drive, they go right down the field, and I'm thinking, man, okay, nice drive, balanced, good deep ball, and they take a 7-0 lead, and then the defense gives it right back as Tagovailoa led that team down the field, and you're right, running the ball, throwing, they did whatever they wanted against that Browns defense, and for me, it starts on the defensive line and the interior of that defensive line. And that was their weakness in the offseason. They ignored it for whatever damn reason. They didn't feel they needed to address it. And it's come back to bite them in the ass, because right now, and Cincinnati's kicking themselves, probably looking back at that film thinking, why the hell didn't we run the ball 30 times against that crappy defensive line? Because they can't stop anybody. It's a hot knife going through butter running the ball against the Cleveland Browns. And once you do that, then you got to bring some of those so-called linebackers that are more like safeties, undersized, up to the line, and they're getting run over. They're getting dump trucked. And the secondary did a decent job on, Tyreek Hill tonight, as well as Waddle, but it didn't matter because they were running the ball at will. The effort was not there. The defensive line is awful. Joe Woods, again, I don't know how he keeps his job at the end of this year, to be perfectly honest with you. Myles Garrett kind of threw him under the bus, right? Something about, well, you can't run through the wall if you don't what is it? You can't run through a wall if you're not all going in the same direction. In other words, well, what's going on with the coaches? So, this was an awful effort today defensively by this Cleveland Browns team, and I don't want to hear about how hot it was in South Beach.
That's being brought up, huh? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll just ignore that and move along, because that's a bunch of BS nonsense. Look, you just brought it up, Kenny. You cannot be small in your interior defensive line and with your linebacking core. You and I've talked about this before, right? I'm talking about being physically small, not big enough. Andrew Berry, this is on you, man. This concept you have that you want to go fast and lean on your defensive line and with your 215-pound linebackers. I'm sorry, Andrew. I've been all about you. Nobody's been more positive and doling out that positivity right, to Andrew Berry, kudos than me the last couple years.
Yep.
This now, those two positions, that's all him. And it's epic fails. He wants to go small, lean, and fast. Kenny, you cannot win that way defensively in the NFL. And I hope Mr. Berry this is something that I hope he takes real seriously and earnestly in this offseason, because you're not going to win that way. You better get bigger, Andrew, in your D-line and in your linebacking core. And you got to do it in multiple areas, those two areas, but with multiple players, because Kenny, it's egregiously showing up very poor. That's why they're getting run on just so dramatically.
Yeah, I'm looking at the rushing yards today for the Miami Dolphins, 33 times for $195 and 2 touchdowns, Reg. So 5 yards shy of 200 yards. Why anybody wouldn't run the ball 30 times against the Browns is beyond me. There's your recipe for success. The Bills aren't the greatest running team in the world, and I don't know if Josh Allen will play next week or not, as he got dinged up supposedly a little bit again today in that loss to the Vikings. But they've got to look at this and go, well, good. Maybe that to give Josh a little bit of a breather. Maybe all we need to do is run the football against the Browns, and the Buccaneers will see that as those are the next two opponents going up against the Cleveland Browns. So you're right, Andrew Berry. He's the one who did the shopping, right?
Yep.
He went out and had his grocery list, and this is what he had on that list, and that's what he bought. That's what he drafted. That's what he traded for, and it is not nearly enough on the defensive line and the defense overall. The defensive line stinks. The linebackers are too small, and the secondary is just average at best, and that's one of the reasons you're 3-6 going into game number 10 next week.
That's a pretty bad recipe, all those things that we've just pointed out. So, Kenny, again, we were enthused and what have you last week, and thought, you know what, they're not going to beat Buffalo. And I'm not sure then they're going to beat Tom Brady when he comes in here either. And then you can just put an end to, if that's the case, hell, even if they do. But, this is supposed to be a playoff team, man. This is supposed to be a playoff team that, was going to show those capabilities and show why that. And how about maybe us too, Kenny? How about us? Did we buy all the Kool-Aid and vastly overrate this roster? I mean, we're talented, all kinds of talent here. Are they really that talented a football team? I mean, you can tell me all you want about, again, they don't have their quarterback. Well, listen, again, the biggest issues are on the other side of the ball. And we just laid it out there. So there it is. It's on the other side of the ball. Kenny, you got to put up 30, 35, 40 points every week to try to win. And that's with the exception of just a couple of games. And again, they played real well against Cincinnati defensively. Yeah, they did. Fine. All right. But what about consistency? What about being able to sustain it? What about at least, you just said it. Well, what are teams really? They got to extensively game plan against the Browns on their offensive side of the ball? You just said it. You know what you're going to do? You're going to be able, if you commit yourself to the run, you will wear the Browns down. You'll run the football for $150 or more and take control of the football game. I mean, that's what I see. It's pretty much that simple.
Standings in the AFC North, Michael, as we tape this podcast. Baltimore in first place, 6-3. Cincinnati second place, a game back, 5-4. Cleveland and Pittsburgh. Steelers beat the Saints today. Saints are really bad in order to lose to Pittsburgh. They must be. Cleveland and Pittsburgh tied at 3-6 in the cellar of the AFC North. So everybody's played 9 games. That means you got 8 more to go, 2 with Jacoby Brissett as your quarterback, and then supposedly 6 with Deshaun Watson as your quarterback. And it, like you said, they lose one of the next 2. It ain't going to matter when you bring Deshaun Watson back. And they lose the next two for sure. Forget about it. Season's over at 3-8, bringing him back. So, Michael, this team needs to be seriously looked at under the microscope in the offseason. The question is, who does the looking? Is it still going to be Andrew Berry? Is it still going to be coached by Stefanski? Is Joe Woods going to be the D coordinator, or does Jimmy Haslam come down and say, all right, no, I ain't putting up with this crap. I've seen this story before, and okay, yeah, I hate to do it because continuity is important and everything, but is he going to blow this thing up if they end up going 6-11 or 7-10, something like that, with supposedly all this talent that you talked about earlier on this ride? It could get ugly. Real, you thought this offseason was ugly, and it was. Don't get me wrong, and it was far more important as far as why it was ugly off the field because of what Deshaun Watson was alleged of doing. Right, so don't misinterpret this anybody out there, okay? But on the field, yeah, they're really, really ugly, and they're going to have to make some major adjustments this offseason to get this thing turned around if they think they're going to challenge forget the AFC title, the AFC North Championship, something they've never won since it's been in existence.
Yeah, how about that? How about a damning statement is that? That this organization that everybody feels is one of the pillars of long-standing excellence in the National Football League, right? Well, no. And don't think for a moment, piggybacking off what you just said, continuity, Ken, sustainability,
right.
Don't think for a moment Jimmy Haslam is going to, if he gets upset enough and just basically throwing his hands up in the air and saying this is not what. Hey, he'll make moves. He'll fire the head coach, right? And then you have another head coach and a whole new staff. And don't think that he's just going to just automatically. Again, if this thing goes way off the rails, I'd almost be surprised if he didn't, Ken.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I mean, this is year 3. And I mean, again, so if you're selling this, that you got a roster that is talent strong, that can win, and they wind up, I don't know, 7-10, 6-11. Well, you necessarily think he's going to sit there after that finale and say, "Well, yeah, we'll bring this back. We'll make some tweaks." I'm not at all. They either better, they're gonna have to finish this up with some oomph, man. And I don't know if he's going to hold it to making the playoffs at this point. But that's we brought that up. That's very far-fetched, Kenny. In fact, it's so far-fetched. I'm not even discussing anything to do with that right at the moment because, they got a very, very small chance to do that. And first of all, you got to start playing winning football. What have we seen other than that Bengals game that's the case?
Not much, right?
No,
thought maybe we saw a little bit of that defense shining in Baltimore, keeping Lamar Jackson in check, and then they backed that up with a game against the Bengals with a victory on Monday night, and then they go out and have 2 weeks to prepare, and this is what you lay out there? 2 weeks to prepare for a 39-17? Was that the final? I lost track. Was it 39-17?
That's what it was.
Yeah, 39-17. That's what you laid out there after 2 weeks of preparation?
Terrible look.
Oh,
terrible look. Look, you got a bye week. You got a bye week coming off a win. And what are you all of a sudden fat cats now? Oh, you got to win. Now we got a bye week. Now everything's just got rolling our way. No, it just doesn't do that in the National Football League. They're not capable of sustaining, Ken. I mean, that's really the only thing that we can come away with. We'll go back, and I still, Bill Parcells, baby, you are what your record says you are. And that's the teams that he coached that were having poor seasons. So what he was saying is you could try to sugarcoat it all you want. You could say, well, but we got this or this, and that's going well. No. They're a 3-6 football team with 8 to play. And if you could tell me you've got, I'll grant you that you may want to say that after this, the next 2 weeks, if you want to say, but see, I'd be careful of that too. Well, the schedule will get easier. Baloney. It's the National Football League. Don't try to tell me that, tell me whoever you think are the bottom 2 or 3 teams in the league that aren't the Cleveland Browns. And you think you're just going to go and roll on up there and manhandle them and beat them every time you... No, man. This team isn't capable of that, Ken. They're showing that to us every time they go out. And then they'll fool you once in a while, right? Like we're talking about, like they did against Cincinnati. And, well, there's all kinds... Again, I don't know. As I look at it, I'm not really to me, this talent thing on this football team, very overrated. And then you throw in Andrew Berry's just terrible misfire. What we discussed and you laid out, D-line and linebacking crew. You can't win that way.
No.
You just can't.
Michael, Jacoby Brissett, they're 3-6 with him. Is he the entire problem on off? No, he's not. But
no,
he is who we thought he was,
exactly.
Right? A
exactly.
backup quarterback. He's
right.
3-6. I think, what was he? Was he with Miami last year? He was, right?
Yeah.
He was 0-5 as a starter last year.
Right. He backed up Tua.
So he's 3-11 in his last 14 starts. And that's who he is. There's a reason why Belichick didn't see him as the successor to Tom Brady and got rid of him, right?
Yep.
And so that falls on Andrew Berry again, right? Because that's who they went out knowing that they were going to have Deshaun Watson miss what they thought 5-6 games turned into 11. This is the quarterback they targeted. There were other guys out there, not great guys, okay, but there were other. Mitch Trubisky was out there. You could have traded for Jimmy Garoppolo, possibly, right? They went out, they sought out Jacoby Brissett, brought him in here, and again, he's average at best. When you're ahead, it's fine. When you're playing from behind, he can't lead you back to a victory.
Nope.
And he's 3-6 because that's who he is. And so I don't see him being on this football team next year. And somebody will pick him up as a backup where he should be. But 11 games, he's not going to help you win a division, a wild card, a playoff spot in any way, shape, or form. And that's why I think originally I had them at 11-6, Michael. Yeah. Then I said, let me go 10-7. Then when we found out how long it was, I think I said, I'll go 9-8 without Deshaun Watson. If they go 9-8, that'll be a miracle at this point.
They got to go 6-2.
Yeah, that ain't happening.
In their last 8 to achieve 9-8.
Yeah.
So it's I want to say it's a shame, but then again, is it really? Because as we're pointing out, this is flawed in a lot of different areas, and now, as we said, you don't know. You just don't know how the owners of this football team are going to see this if, as Kenny and I are saying, if this winds up, in a 6-11 or 7-10, where hey, I'm telling, I will tell you, I think there's a greater chance that they make a move if that's the case.
Right.
I
think so too, Michael. Yeah.
They'll make a move with the head coach, and I don't know.
Coach of the Year award only buys you a little bit of time, and
that's right.
This will be year 3. And by the way, Stefanski in his last 13 games is 4-9. You want to take it further? In his last 22 games, he's 8-14. Okay, so that fall from grace happened rather quickly. And a lot of people are saying, well, he's going to get a bye this year because he didn't have Deshaun Watson. Well, he's had a chance to win some games, and his play calling, his decision-making. Again, I look up here tonight, Nick Chubb, best running back in the NFL, got 11 carries today. And
that
Michael,
came most of them came in the second half late.
And Michael, it was only a 10-7 game at one point in the first half, and then late in the first half they scored. It was 17-7. So it's not like they had to throw the ball, that they were that far behind. And last week, 44 runs, 22 passes. They win the game, or 2 weeks ago against Cincinnati, and then they come out and they give them the ball 11 times for 63 yards. And 33 of those, Allen, one big run, so he didn't have a great yards per carry average.
He did not.
But that's what he can do if you give him the ball enough. He can eventually break one for you like that. And when you're struggling offensively, that's the guy you need to go to. So this team's a mess right now. And I don't know what the elixir is, and I don't think it's even Deshaun Watson. I don't think even he can fix this right now.
No, probably not. And again, when I looked in the third quarter, and it was early in the third, but Chubb was 6 carries for 17 yards.
Yeah.
Not even 3 yards a carry. Now, I'll tell you how that happens. How that happens is when you don't commit to what we all believe is the best part of your football team, your run game. But when you, and again, you're so right. I mean, man, when you're down a touchdown or 10, I'd say even 13, 14 with this team.
Right.
Still early, when I'm talking about either late first half, early second half, you don't get away from your run game. That's what you do. I mean, that's who you're supposed to be.
Yep.
Then you get the offensive line saddled up and let's go.
If you would have told me, Michael, if you would have told me a team had 195 yards today and 2 touchdowns on the ground before the game, I say, hey, Browns, they did it again. That's offensive line, they featured Chubb, they won the game. Well, that's what the Dolphins did today. $195 on 33 carries and 2 touchdowns. And their longest run from scrimmage was 24 yards running the football. And so kudos to the Miami Dolphins, is they got it done 39-17 over the Browns. Michael, let's get a break in. When we come back, we'll look at the remaining games when Deshaun Watson does come back, and what has to happen if this team is going to save this season, resurrect this defense, and have a chance to make the playoffs somehow, some way. We'll do that here on the Press Play Podcast Network right after this.
Looking for new insights on the Cleveland sports scene with a unique side of Cleveland sports history? Then you found the perfect podcast. I'm John Sable.
And I'm Scott Sable, and we're hosts of the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, a podcast about Cleveland sports, but not your typical podcast about the land's sports teams. Join us as we embark on a journey of sharing a unique and historical side of Cleveland sports history with the help of some former Cleveland sports stars and other historical figures.
All right here on the Sable Brothers on the Baseline podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, it's Sam Amico from Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. Be sure to give us a listen for all your Cleveland Cavaliers recaps, analysis, breakdowns, draft talk, free agency. The list goes on and on. Give us a listen, Cavs on the Break NBA podcast.
What's up everyone, I'm Holly Wetzel.
And I'm Tyrus Powell.
And we are your hosts of the Orange is Oranger, a Cleveland Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network. We give you all the dog pound coverage that you'll need to get you through the regular season, hopeful postseason, and I'd say off-season, Tyvis, but is there really ever an off-season for this team?
Thankfully for our podcast, Holly, there really never is when it comes to the Cleveland Browns. Don't miss our breakdown of each week's matchup, game recaps, and any and all news out of Berea to feed your Browns appetite. As we know, Holly, dogs gotta eat.
Yes, they do. So hit that subscribe button and never miss an episode of the Orange is Oranger, Cleveland Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey, I'm Jason.
And I'm Gary, and we love ball cards.
And if you love ball cards too, good news. You just found your new favorite podcast. From breaks to grading.
And from collecting to flipping, join us on the Ball Card Show.
The sports podcast for the sports collector.
And we continue with the Reghi and Roda podcast here on the Press Play Podcast Network, brought to you by MGM Northfield Park. Northfield Park is your home for live and simulcast racing. Catch the excitement of live harness racing every Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday evening with a 6 p.m. post time. Wager and win daily on top thoroughbred and harness tracks from around the world with action starting around noon. Plus, you can enter to play the free handicapping contest. That happens every Sunday. And your chance to win a top prize of $500. Registration there begins at 11 a.m. Free admission, free parking every day at Northfield Park. All right, Michael, 3-6. You are what your record says you are. That is the Browns, last place in the AFC North. 3 + 6 is 9 - 17. 8 games left, Michael. 2 with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback, and then 6 with Deshaun Watson at quarterback. Let's go. I know it's ridiculous to do this, but let's go glass half full, Michael Reghi. What has to happen in these remaining 8 games for the Browns to get into the playoffs? I don't care how, division winner or wild card. What
after we just said you're going to do this to me?
Yes. What has to happen for them to have this crazy chance? You know what? It'll be a mirror. It'll be like the Mount Union Purple Raiders yesterday. They're calling it the Mount Union Miracle, beating my Baldwin Wallace Yellow Jackets for the 27th consecutive time on a Hail Mary at the gun at Trestle Field at George Finney Stadium. Oh, no, it should have been knocked down. You knock the damn ball down. Yeah. You don't go for the interception. You knock it down. You win the damn game. So the miracle happened for Mount Union as they won another OAC title. One. I know, right?
Any team needs miracles.
Right.
Them.
Well, the Browns do need a miracle. So what has to happen for that miracle to happen for the Cleveland Browns? Uh-oh, you called me Kenneth. Uh-oh, here we go.
How about come up with an entire new defensive room of player personnel?
Okay.
In the next 7 days to start with. I'm pretty down on the defensive side of the ball, Kenny. Pretty down on them for all the reasons we just laid out. I don't see it, my man, to answer you. What has to happen? I don't see it happening. I don't think they can play that kind of winning football. They just don't do it consistently, Ken. And again, that tells me that there's issues with this roster, Kenny. There's issues on this roster. Okay. And again, I think you got to get that. It's going to take an off season to hopefully get that squared away, So I'm calling the college hoop game today, right? Yeah. And so Son Cal, of course, who's a huge, lives and dies with the Browns, huge Browns fan. He's texting me, and I'm saying so I find out, now I got to go watch this thing, obviously. Now I'm taping, and now I got to get home and go watch this mess.
Right.
Cal says to me, Dad, don't worry. Here's all you need to know. You don't need to watch it. The O-line got pushed around all day. The defense plays with no energy or pride. Dolphins got whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted, running the football. And then I won't tell you what he said about a couple of players. The only positive thing he said to me is Donovan Peoples-Jones is promising. Everything else was, what I just read to you.
Right.
Not good. Yeah. So I said, well, okay. I know you know enough about it. So, and then when I watched it, I said he's pretty much correct on everything he said.
Yep.
But I mean, it's, Kenny, I don't think it's going to get fixed until, and it's no guarantee, but I think in this offseason, there has to be a lot of personnel changes, player roster, and most specifically defensively. And I don't know where this whole thing about this Joe Woods thing, I've heard ad nauseum now. It's been constant, right, over the course of this season.
Yep.
And again, now if there's a head coaching change, most people feel like, that's not a possibility. Hey, listen. Yeah, I would have said the same thing too, but we've already said it, so we'll go into it again. If this thing goes off the rails, right, and they finish poorly, you actually mean I wouldn't put it past that man. to make changes. It just is. How upset does he get? How much does he, or is he sold on that that's where the main problem is coming from? Right?
Yep.
So that's to be determined. Then again, if they do sustain some wins and, then I guess you don't have to worry about that, at least a coaching change, but nothing would surprise me, Kenny, if this thing keeps going south. Nothing.
All right, Michael, I'm going to give you the glass half full, the Mount Union miracle version of how the Browns get in the playoffs. Okay.
Okay.
Here's what has to happen in order for the current 3-6 Cleveland Browns, all right, to get in the playoffs. Somehow, some way, it starts next week on the road at Buffalo. Maybe Josh Allen doesn't play. I don't know. Okay. So Josh Allen's out.
Not to interrupt you, but they lost today.
I know. 2 in a row, though, they've lost. So why not 3 in a row? Why not 3 in a row for the Buffalo Bills, right?
Okay.
Josh Allen or no Josh Allen. So the Browns go into Buffalo, shock the world, and beat the Bills. Then they come home, and Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers come into town, and they're starting to play better, right? Yeah. They think they're just going to waltz in here, and they take the Browns for granted. And Cade York hits a 68-yard field goal at the gun, and they shock the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to get the 2 that they desperately needed, right? So got to get those 2 to start things, Michael. Then after that, the Browns, when you look at the schedule, say, okay, well, it gets a little bit easier after that, right, for the Brownies after those 2 tough games. So you look at the schedule and say, all right, after beating the Buffalo Bills and after beating Tom Brady, okay, what has to happen in that next game? Well, in that next game, all they have to do is bring Deshaun Watson back, go to Houston, and whoop up on the crappy Texans. That's very possible. The Texans stink. So that's 3 wins in a row. Then the crucial part of the schedule, Cincinnati at Cincinnati, Baltimore at home. That is where, if we're looking glass half full, I don't think it can really happen, but I'm trying to paint this picture of how it possibly could happen.
You certainly are, my man.
Right?
Yeah,
right.
You certainly are, and that's more than half full, buddy. You've done at least 3/4 right up to the rim of the glass. Yeah. Okay, and that's all I'll say.
That glass was some Cabo Wabo tequila, and I've been drinking it, trying to figure out a way for them to make the playoffs. Right. So you got to split with those 2, Cincinnati and Baltimore. And then, Reg, cakewalk, baby. New Orleans, Washington, and Pittsburgh decline. They go 7-1. Okay, in these remaining 8 games, finish 10-7 and sneak into the play. That's what has to happen in order for the Cleveland Browns to make the playoffs. And if I were in Vegas, I would not bet a penny on it possibly happening. No chance of that happening, but that's what has to happen, in my opinion, for them to get in the playoffs. They've got to go 7-1 to have a shot at making the playoffs and finish by my accounts at that point. 7-1 would make them 10-7, and that might get them in the playoffs. So there you go. There's the glass half full for everybody who thinks I'm only just negative about Cleveland sports.
I'll give you high grades for creativity, my friend.
Thank you.
That's very creative the way you laid that out there. But I think the most impressive thing you said is you wouldn't bet a penny of your money on any of that happening.
Wouldn't waste it. No.
Yeah, right. So.
I'll keep that penny for another day. Reg, this team teased us last 2 weeks ago with the Bengals. Showed us maybe who they really are today, somewhere in between, probably. So realistically, as I look at the remaining, 8 games, I could see them going maybe at best 4-4, which would finish them at 7-10, Michael. And I think that's more realistic, for this team. And that's, if I'm playing the schedule game now at the midway point almost, I'll go. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt with Deshaun Watson, say 4-4 and 7-10, but more than likely 6-11 is that final number I think they'll end up at.
Again, can only go by what they show you. Yep. And again, they've shown us that they aren't consistent at all. They don't know how to sustain positive performances, Kenny, and that's what really stands out to me and kind of irks me, to be honest with you. we say this all the time, and there are only 17 of these now. And when you have a positive win in the National Football League, right, and you're a team who considers yourself a team that should play, I'm just going to say play in January, and we know what that means. Well, then you've got to be able to show that you can sustain your positive performances. Do they do that? Do they do anything even remotely close to that? They not only don't do that, Ken, they come up with just terrible efforts like today, right? Sustained positivity. Hell, they go the opposite direction. They come off strong performances with terrible performances the next time they go out. I don't know how you can get behind that. It's hard to.
Hey, Reg, you want some futures bets on the Browns for next year? They're already out, my friend. You ready for this?
Yes, I'm ready.
Yeah,
I'm ready.
Here we go. If you think this season's already over, and a lot of us do, right? You can start looking ahead to next year because Caesars Sportsbook released their futures bets for next season in the NFL. And if you want to bet on the Browns winning the AFC North, you get some pretty good odds, Reg. Plus 1,800. Bet 100, win 1,800 on the Browns winning the AFC North next year. That's a futures bet that's out courtesy of Caesars Sportsbook. Let's see here. If you want to bet on the Browns winning the AFC next year, the entire AFC, right? Representing the AFC in the Super Bowl next year. How about these odds? Plus 5,000 right now on the Browns winning the AFC next year. So lay 100. Plus 5,000 you can put in your pocketbook. So there's a couple of futures bets for you. If you're already, in the hole this year from betting on the Browns and you want to try and get back some of that cash next year, you want to feel good about it. That's what Caesars thinks right now of the Browns to win the division, plus 1,800 to win the AFC next year, plus 5,000. And that's with a Deshaun Watson at quarterback. So it doesn't change that much, to be honest with you.
Hang on to your money.
Yeah, that's
Hang on to your money. Don't throw good money after bad.
Go buy some Bitcoin with it. You're better off buying Bitcoin than you are betting on the Browns.
You might be. Yes, you might be.
Go.
That's right. Yeah, you might.
It's not the one Tom Brady invested in. They went bankrupt. You want to pick another Bitcoin company as far as that goes.
Righto.
All right, Reg. Final thoughts on this as we wrap up this R&R podcast brought to you by MGM Northfield Park.
I guess you, I guess you want to feel some sort of that. Well, if the Browns, I suppose, if they go on their current standard, Kenny, you would assume they'd go into Buffalo and play decently to well next week.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
You would assume, and I mean, you would hope if they got any heart, they got any pulse, they got any care. They got any desire at all, you damn well should hope so, because if they come out anything at all like they did today, then they're getting closer and closer to having dramatic changes on this football team. So, I just, again, I can't bring myself to believe or want to think that they can beat the better teams in the league right now, Kenny. Not with what they put out week after week. You do know what you're going to get. They may give you a good one, and then they'll be an atrocity like they were today. Right. So we kind of do know what they are, right? And again, you are what your record says you are, and that's 3-6 right now, and way on the outside looking in to playing any meaningful football as the winter really hits in the new year.
I'll get this quote correct from earlier in the podcast from Myles Garrett so nobody yells at me on Twitter. Myles Garrett today, after the loss to the Miami Dolphins, said the following: doesn't matter if you're ready to run through a wall if it's in the wrong direction. So whatever the hell that means, that came from Myles Garrett today. Is that a shot at the Browns coaching staff?
Yes.
It is.
It's a shot at the coaching staff.
Yeah. So let's see. You've had a team meeting already with the players and the coaches out of it, right? You had players calling each other out in the locker room, yelling at each other after a game, and now you got this from your defensive leader who had, oh, by the way, 2 tackles and no sacks today. for Myles Garrett, your $100 million man defensive end. So, Reg, we'll see what happens next week. And I hope he's okay. I hope he's not hurt. But the only chance I think the Browns have of beating Buffalo next week is if Josh Allen does not play. If Josh Allen plays, I don't think they stand a chance because that means he'll be healthy enough to play. And they've lost 2 in a row, and I can't see the Bills losing 3 in a row unless Josh Allen doesn't play next week. So we'll break it down again next week after the Bills and the Browns go at it in Buffalo. All right.
Yeah, we'll keep watching and, see if any of this changes.
Do we have to?
It's what we signed up for, my man.
Yeah,
no,
I guess.
Yeah.
I guess so.
It is. So have a good week.
How about if we just have Cal and Cam watch the games and then they can tell us what happened?
That'd be fine.
That's good.
That'd be fine. I'm all right with that.
Yeah. Cal can watch down in Columbus there as he's enjoying campus life at Ohio State, and Cameron can sit on a beach in Portugal somewhere and watch the game and then text me back what went down with it.
There you go, man. It's all good. I don't see anything wrong with that.
No.
if that's the way we go, right?
Yeah, it can't be any worse than what's going on now as we're trying to break it down. And it's just it's mind-boggling how bad this team can look one week and how decent they can look the next. All right, Reg, we're going to get out of here. We'll talk again next week after that Browns-Bills game. Always a pleasure, my friend. Have a great week. All right, pal?
For sure, buddy. Always good to get us together and chop it up, and we'll do it again next week. Talk to you then.
Sounds good. And thanks to all of our listeners out there checking out the Reghi and Roda podcast here on the Press Play Podcast Network. We appreciate your loyalty and your listenership.